This is John F. Kennedy. Is he an ambitious man? Was he an ambitious man? Was he a good orator? It's all fluidity and determination. He has very long descenders. Would that be high energy or low energy?
High energy.
Maybe big sex drive? Maybe? Ask Marilyn. She would know. Desire of responsibility. This is an interesting trait because this is not one that I would necessarily program in, but when you see it, these people will gravitate toward control. It's actually very similar to the jealousy stroke, which is a fear of not being loved. So it's a fear of not being loved by large people, which motivates them to be loved by a large number of people, which means I'll volunteer to be a vice president. I'd like to be president of the community. I want to be mayor. I mean, most community service jobs don't pay much, but the benefit is responsibility and esteem and pride. So this is not a bad trait to have. I've never intentionally programmed it. I remember Ray Walker, he intentionally programmed it, and he did actually have a nice big following. You have any questions, Cindy?
I was just going to say, have you seen Sarah Palin's signature? I mean, that's her S.
Sarah Palin can write?
Absolutely.
Oh, come on. That was a good joke. It was a great joke. And all these Republicans, Sarah Palin, she should have been president because he was going to die. There should be a moose on every table. That's my slogan.
And a hockey stick.
And a hockey stick. I like hockey. Yeah. You know, Beth was a hockey player. Did you know that? Yeah. I'll let her tell that story. Of course, and most people that gravitate to that as well. Did I mention high self-esteem, persistence, determination, enthusiasm, integrity, and honesty? Very important for long-term success. Not necessarily short-term scams, but long-term success, you'll find that's going to be a big benefit. Intelligence, you can be a Nimrod and be rich, but it's going to be better if you're intelligent, a whole lot better to maintain your money. Kindness, I argue kindness is better for management. I have seen managers that are a little bit of tyrants, but that's just my preference. Ethics would be hugely important, which, by the way, is not in one trait in hand. It's not a primary trait. You would have to stack together many. And if you figure out a perfect formula for predicting that, please let me know. We'll publish a book together. I would say ethics is one of the most difficult things to predict in handwriting and predict in human beings. Raise your hand if you're a thief. Raise your hand if you'd steal an apple in the middle of a war to feed your kids. Oh my God, it's a whole room full of stealers. Pittsburgh. It's contextual. If ethics are contextual, how can handwriting predict it? So that's the challenge and the quandary you get. People say handwriting is inaccurate. But if you're trying to predict contextual things, then you've got to take context in the equation, which is a little bit difficult to predict. Okay? This guy's named Jack Diamond. I believe he still has a show in Washington, D.C. He's a radio host. I met him. I saw his handwriting. I appeared on his morning show 10 years ago, and I just thought, wow, my God, this guy's got high self-esteem. He's got persistence. He's got enthusiasm. He's got optimism. You know, there's just a lot of good things about him. And his O's are open, which means what? He's talkative. Would that be handy for a morning show host?
Yes.
I've done a lot of difficult things in my life, but the most difficult was sitting behind a microphone in Dallas, Texas, on an AM radio show at 3:30 in the afternoon with no one in the box with me and about 30,000 people listening and not knowing what to say because I don't really keep up on politics. And there was no Sarah Palin to make fun of at that time. That's difficult. It's easy to die, you know, but that was tough for me.
I had a question about your last slide. Sorry, I'm a little slow.
I can go backwards because I know how to run this.
How do you see kindness in handwriting?
How do you see kindness? There's a couple of traits of kindness. Benevolence is an advanced trait. Do you have the advanced course? It's called benevolence. Generally, there is a cadence of a feminine handwriting, which has got a lot of roundness versus angles. And so it's yin versus yang. So is yang is the masculine energy, is that correct?
Yes.
So the more yin features you see, the more kind you're going to have. The Einsteins, you know, brilliant. And there's nothing been read about Einstein that's hostile, but overly analytical, overly masculine traits tend to not fall in the category of kindness. So if you're going to hire an office manager that is that you want to be feminine and supportive and motherly, you're going to see the kindness. Almost the caretakers, the school teachers, those are not just women, but they're more feminine in their energy, which is the yin and the yang, so to speak. But it's not one single trait. But benevolence would be the closest that they've identified as a primary trait. I believe it is a primary trait. It's just an advanced primary trait. And honestly, I don't see it that often, but it's part of the overall arcadeness of a feminine handwriting.
I was gonna ask the opposite, would the garlands be prevalent because they're more soft?
Yes,
Feminine.
and if you've noticed, her question was garland. The word garland is not in the 301 course, and it's not in my books. But I recognize it, I understand that it has a relevance to it, and I would encourage you to learn about the symbology, the margins and the zones, now that you're certified. Because now that you know all the traits inside and out, you can manage those subjective sort of gestalt observations with facts. And that's why they're not in my basic books, because when people see that and they start making these huge notes, you're very feminine, you're very supportive, you love people. All people? I love Hitler? No, I don't like that, and it reminds me of a beginning astrologist who makes big blanket statements. They're all accurate, by the way, but they're accurate in context because Gestalt by itself is holistic, and you have to take the whole thing into view. So it's something that I reserve for once you're certified. Let's handle all that. Let's use all that incorporated, and that's how. It's the only way you're going to get a really accurate picture of the person in its entirety, as well as things like ethics, is to take those into consideration. But for most people, they won't have the discipline to learn the 90, 95 primary traits before they get into the hocus pocus stuff. Okay, Jack Diamond. And finally, do you have any, in your own personality, do you have any roadblocks to your own success? That would be the things we talked about. The fears will slow you down. The success traits will speed you up. You've got brakes and you've got an engine. And so the engine success traits will push you along. The fears will slow you down. There will be a lecture this weekend that I will do called Fears in Handwriting. And I've taken some of the traits which you already know, and we've added the word fear of something. Fear of failure, fear of looking stupid. And you'll start thinking about it. Wow, I never thought about that. But the less fears you have, the easier it is to move along in life. Okay, I believe that's it. Large signature and ego. Does that help? Does it help your marriage? Maybe not. Does it help you as a CEO? Probably. Help you set goals? Think of the signature as like space, like this space here. You walk in and you're, ta-da, it's a big ego. You need to have that sense of who you are. If it's very tiny, the signature's very tiny, they tend to get walked on. So the three components to good self-esteem, are the big ego, which is the size of your signature, the personal pronoun I, which is also represents who I am. Only in the English language, by the way. In Italian and French and Spanish, I is not a word. It's Joe, like J-O. And J-O is not an I. So it doesn't really correlate. You've got to make some adjustments to other languages as well. You seem to agree with that. You've noticed that?
Yeah, I've noticed that because in French, the I means
It's
nothing,
not in, yeah.
but the J is the equivalent of the I. But funny enough, the upper part of the J is the same as the I. So
Oh, really?
you sort of, the lower part of the J will often resemble, but the upper part, I find the upper part of my I
How
and my J are
interesting.
identical. That was one of my
You
questions.
need to write a book on French handwriting. By the way, the French are, besides good cooks and make good perfume, they write really good graphology books. They actually were one of the earlier pioneers for graphotherapy as well.
And I'm quite sure that in French, the J is the I.
The J is the I in France.
It would make
That's a
perfect
great
sense.
tip. I just learned something today. This is
Yeah,
fantastic.
I
Thank you for
think
teaching
it makes
me.
perfect sense because you're,
Right.
it
With
would
that
be mother,
personal pronoun.
father,
Yeah,
and that would show the same thing. Some
nice. Okay.
I'm sorry,
No, you go ahead, Maria.
ego, size of signature.
Would you put John
Pronoun.
Bovenizer's signature on? Go ahead. Size of signature?
Size of signature, pronoun I, and the third one was,
The T-bar.
oh,
The T-bar, the self-esteem. Remember, T-bar is about goals and ambition. You could have a lot of ambition and no ego, and you would sit around dreaming a lot. So it's all three of those together would be your most successful people. You could have a big ego, low self-esteem, and vanity, and what would that get you? It might get you a good table in a restaurant, but you're going to be kind of a jerk about it. It means that they really don't love themselves, but they're going to have the ego that makes everyone look at them, and then people will think they've got a good self-image until you're married to them and you realize that they're an SOB.